Just as one case in Kolkata was being investigated now, the survivor managing to speak up, another young woman has come up. And this is being seen as a second survivor of this alleged rapist Manojit Mishra's sexual assault case. This is horrifying. Does this mean that he's been able to assault young women earlier as well and nothing was done about it? And the fact that he was seen with TMC leaders regularly. Second victim has spoken out. I'm talking about 2 years since the assault and alleged death threats also against this young woman. There is a young woman who's come forth and exposing that there was shocking TMC support, which is leadership of the state, of the area, and who was protecting the student leader, so to say. But this, remember, is concerning. That there is already one young woman who's been able to be brave enough to come forth and very categorically say that this young man on your screen, Manojit Mishra, and 2 others have not only beaten her, blackmailed her, but sexually tortured and assaulted her as well, and knowing fairly well that they have political audacity, political support, which is with regard to the Trinamool Congress. But how did he then manage, this young man? Not very powerful, so to say. And yet, when there are multiple complaints against him, managed to get a free run. I want to add here, India today has spoken to the second woman, to the survivor, as is being seen, who has said it's not just the latest case corroborated by the CCTV images by the cops. I was also sexually assaulted by the same.
We all were just gathered in one room and nobody was to be seen in the garden area anymore, except Manojit and the caretaker who had joined along in his drinking session.
Okay.
So after a while, between the music and song sessions and gossiping sessions of the friends, my father had given me a call. In order to avoid the background noise and the chaos, I had managed to get to the other room. And I observed that the other room where the boys were initially supposed to be located, that other room was entirely vacant.
Okay.
So I took that chance and I went to the room.
Initially,
and,
there was no one inside the room.
No. There was
Okay.
no one in the room. So I had gone to the room and of course I did not leave the door locked or something like that because I did not need to. So when I went inside the room, I had talked to my father for around 3 to 4 minutes. And by the time I kept the call, I had checked the time once. As it was visible on the phone. It was 5:35 exactly. And by the time I turned my back to get out the room and get out of the room and then join my other friends who were sitting in the other room, I had noticed that Manojit Mishra was the one who had locked the door. And he was staring at me and he was evidently very much under the influence of not just alcohol but evidently also weed. He was thinking of it. And he had been advancing towards me with his buttons of the shirt opening one by one. Any girl in my possession, including me, I sensed what was about to come and what could be this guy standing in front of me's intentions. So
Right.
in a very decent way, I had asked him that in a vernacular language itself, Dada, I would want to get out. Don't lock the door. Actually, open it. I would want to get out. If you have to change, you can change. You can have the room to yourself. But he did not listen to a single word because he had already made up his mind. And then I noticed that he had pulled out a remote from his pant pocket. And with that remote, he just had increased the volume of the speaker that was in the other room where my friends were seated. And he
Okay.
had increased the volume loud enough for nobody to be able to hear if anybody even shouted in the room at the loudest of their capability.
Okay.
So after doing that, he then advanced towards me in a very aggressive way. And whatever his intentions were, it got converted into his actions even more because he started pulling me by my hair. And before even I could resist, he kicked me once on my face with his knee. And then he dragged me onto the balcony.
Okay.
And after taking me to the balcony, he had then constantly been trying to, of course, the resistance was there from my side, but none of it was audible by the other people in the other room. So after a while, when none of it was working anymore, my body froze for some time.
Okay.
And I then noticed that he's been trying to take off my belt, which when he couldn't do it manually or in a decent way enough, he then tore it off. It was an elastic belt, so it did not take a lot of force for him to tear it off. And by the time I had tried my hands to defend myself, he pulled my hands together towards the back. And no matter how drunk a man is, if a man decides to apply the full pressure of his body on a woman, it is very rare that a woman could actually get out of that kind of grip.
Okay.
And the same thing had happened with me as well. So unable to release myself from the grip, it was helpless situation for me out there. And taking advantage of that kind of helplessness itself, he pulled down my pants and then he advanced towards tearing down my top, which he was not able to remove manually as well. That is the time when I started pleading to him, telling him, or I was not able to join my hands. But then I told him in a very much pleading, almost begging kind of way, that Dada, let me go, and whatever you want out of me, just don't do this. I do not even live in Kolkata. I'm not a resident of here. If you do something to me, my parents do not even live here. Please don't do this to me. He just went advanced towards telling me that shout even more, moan more for me. He kept on saying this throughout the incident of molestation, that moan more for me. He took pleasure every time I raised my voice to ask for help
Okay.
or to cry for help. It was just making him more pleasured, nothing else. It was not even making him have a point of sympathy for me. He had already pulled down my pants and he was advancing towards my top. That is when, fortunately, when I had pushed him back and I was trying to escape, that is exactly when a senior female student of our college itself, who was senior to me, she had been knocking on the door constantly, banging on the door constantly. And she had been calling, Manojit, we have to leave. It's already 6:30.
Okay.
That is exactly when I realized that I entered the room at around 5:45 or 5:40, and by that time it was already 6:30. As
Okay.
my senior had been shouting from the other end of the room. So Manojit did not exactly, and he realized that maybe if the girl suspects for anybody apart from him to be there, then that would be a problem to him. So what he did was he just pushed my body that was almost half conscious on the floor with his feet. He just kicked me with his feet, pushed me towards the door like handle, and then he exited the door. But in his haste of time, he forgot to lock the door from outside.
Okay.
So taking chance of that, when he had already gone away from my side at least, I managed to get out of the room.
This is absolutely horrifying to hear. And I want to reiterate, as a responsible channel, that these are the charges and allegations of this young woman. And we'll leave it to the investigators to detail further on this. Rajesh Saha, who spoke to this young woman. Rajesh, I have to say, very brave of this young woman, because often women, like she also mentioned, freeze and are not able to reveal. But one, what is the reason she's speaking up now, 2 years later? And two, possibly do you think the Kolkata police will also speak to her to try and find out further if this man has a history of sexual assault crimes?
Pooja, that clearly proves that was not the first crime committed by the prime accused,
Yes.
Manojit Mishra. And he was a repeated offender according to the claim, because we have found another victim, we have found another survivor who was also allegedly molested 2 years back by this same person. And I spoke to this woman yesterday, and she's a current student of that same college where the gang rape happened on last Wednesday. She's claiming that she was also molested by Manojit Mishra 2 years back during a college trip. However, it was not a college trip. She was told that it will be arranged by the college authority, but after reaching the place, she came to know that it was arranged by the team of Manojit Mishra. And during the trip, she was badly molested by Manojit Mishra. Not only molestation, she was even assaulted by Manojit Mishra. She was beaten up by him, and when she tried to save herself from Manojit Mishra, and following which I personally asked her why you didn't file any police
Yes.
complaint against this person. She replied me that Manojit Mishra was so influential, he was so powerful politically due to his political power, because he was sheltered by Trinamool Congress, and he was close to TMC MLA, who is also the president of governing body of her college.
This
That's
is
why.
exactly what the recent survivor also has said. I've read her complaint and she said this man was so influential. Everyone listened to him. I was scared to even go to the police